My name is Stephanie Saylor, and this presentation is selecting which DNA test to use, part 3 of 4. There is not one type of DNA test that solves every family history mystery. Where in your tree a question is discovered, or where you can find a willing DNA tester is very important. Some types of DNA are easier to work with than others, at least in theory, and others can apply to more of your ancestral line. So there are many questions which play a role in determining what type of DNA test to take. Where in your tree your question exists, how close and on what family line you'd be related to people who would have DNA of the ancestor or ancestors you're trying to learn about, and who in your known and unknown family would be willing to take a DNA test. All of these are crucial to understand to really figure out who you can test. So here's a flowchart that gives you some ideas if you can move forward doing one type of research or another. One of the first questions you want to ask are, do you have good information on your ancestors leading to your person of interest or your ancestor of interest? If you have good information on your ancestors leading up to your person of interest or the ancestor you're researching, you can go ahead and move forward with your research. If you don't have good information, you really need to take a step back, and before you jump into the DNA portion, you need to do the traditional genetic genealogy to understand and know those ancestors between you and all that you're facing. The more information you have in those intervening years, the stronger you're going to be, and moving forward past that brick wall, you'll have a lot more options. The next question you're going to want to ask once you're ready to move forward is, how distantly are you related to the person of interest or that ancestor you're trying to learn about? If you're closely related, then guess what? Autosomal DNA might help you. The more distant your relationship to the person you're trying to find or understand better, the harder autosomal DNA is going to be if used. Whereas close or distant, you might be able to use autosomal DNA still, but whether it's close and distant or very distant, Y-DNA or mitochondrial DNA might be the best type of DNA test for you to do this research, because Y-DNA or mitochondrial DNA are really good at doing distant genetic genealogy research. They're very reliable in the distant, whereas autosomal DNA, the amount of shared DNA decreases the more distant your shared ancestor. So pretty much a medium or distant ancestor. We're going to go ahead and move on to do some more questions. Is your ancestor of interest male or female? If they're male, you're going to want to go in one direction. If they're female, you're going to want to go in the other. But before you can move on, you really need to know, do they have an unbroken line of biological descendants sharing their gender? So if they're male, do they have a son, however many times until they lead either to you or to one of your close relatives? If yes, Y-DNA may be the easiest way to solve this mystery. If they're female, do they have a daughter until that daughter either has a son or daughter, but you can only do that the last time? If so, mitochondrial DNA may be the easiest way to solve that mystery. The reason that this works is that autosomal DNA is shared with all your closer relatives and often many of your moderately distant relatives. The further the relationship between you and your ancestor that you're researching, the harder that research is going to be. Often, Y-DNA and mitochondrial DNA research are easier than autosomal DNA research because they specifically target the direct male line or the direct female line. Often, especially for mitochondrial DNA, you might want to buy more than one DNA test, and Y-DNA mitochondrial DNA tests are more expensive, and they're more specific to just that direct female or direct male line. Only males can take a Y-DNA test. And it only tells them about their fathers, 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 son, 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 son. Only the males that are linked directly in a family line. Whereas mitochondrial DNA is present in both males and females. And so while both can take the test, it only tells about the direct female line. So if you're male and you take the test, it would tell you about your mothers, 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 mother, and so on, because you would match one of that ancestor's daughters, 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 and then the last one could be a daughter or a son, because a woman passes on mitochondrial DNA to all her children, but only women can pass it on.